Hey, everybody. I've been really looking forward to this conversation, and I have a feeling I might be on the hot seat a little bit. So stick around if you want to see what comes of it. Now, let me formally introduce this week's guest. What do you do when you've outgrown hustle, but your business hasn't caught up yet? Today's guest helps entrepreneurs navigate one of the most challenging stages of business growth, the point where working harder is no longer the answer. Instead, success depends on building the systems, teams, and leadership capacity that allow a business to scale. As a business coach and entrepreneur, he works with owners who achieve success but find themselves trapped by it. Their business depends on them for too many decisions, too many approvals, and too much day to day involvement. His work helps leaders build businesses that can outgrow that can grow without becoming more dependent on the owner. He is also the author of Your Business Growth Playbook: Breakthrough Strategies to Scale Your Business for Business Owners Who've Outgrown Hustle, a practical guide for entrepreneurs ready to stop being the bottleneck and start building a business that can thrive beyond their personal capacity. If you've ever felt like your business can't grow unless you work harder, this conversation will challenge that assumption and offer a different path forward. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Shapiro. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on the show. That was just a small little taste. This feels like a very personal conversation for where I am in my business, as I shared before we went live. Before we dive into all of that, though, in your own words, you mentioned it's for entrepreneurs who've outgrown the hustle, but like, who do you mean? Like, give us a little bit of context for how people would identify that for themselves. Like, how do you identify the people who have outgrown the hustle?
Yeah, so early stage when you're first launching a business, right? You've got to go out there and prove out your product, find your market fit, figure out the messaging, all these things that go into getting those initial customers into the business, right? That does take some hustle to get the business off the ground. Once it's humming, you've got sales pipeline, you figured out the messaging, you have leads coming in, you're closing deals and so forth. Now you've got a business. And that hustle approach to working, 80-hour weeks and all just ends up leading towards burnout. And when we look at what it is to be a solopreneur, right, versus a true business owner, there's a huge chasm between those that is really defined by your ability to step away from the business and have the business still run and grow without you being there. So when I talk about business owners who've outgrown hustle, these are folks who are approaching or at that breaking point of wanting to grow the business, not just by putting in more hours, but by working smarter and leveraging proven systems that can grow a business.
I'm feeling very seen in that comment, as I mentioned. Now, you have a lot of experience. I actually, you and I have really met through Kindle Flash Sales, which
Mhm.
is how you ended up being here today. I didn't know a lot about you before that, and your book is excellent. It's been well received, incredibly well received in a number of different ways. I of course I'm like, you got 50 reviews. That's awesome. Like that's one metric, but there's so many different ways it's shown up in the world. And I keep seeing your posts about the content you're doing. And I started to become aware of the fact of like how much more you know.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about why a book though. I mean, you've got multiple decades of experience. You've worked with business owners, it feels like in any and every type of format and sector, which I want to talk about that in a moment as well. But what sparks the idea to write a book? And and it seems like you probably have a lot going on. How did you stay motivated to keep going, to
So it's
actually
funny.
finish a book?
The expertise came from 30 years of working with business owners as a serial entrepreneur myself, helping business owners to grow their businesses. And what I didn't realize is I had a playbook up here. There's like the same strategies I come back to again and again that simply hadn't been codified or written down. It was just accessible and used by me, right? So I decided after much nudging from folks to codify that and put that down and realize there's really a formula there and a system. And that is like the perfect kind of stuff for a book. Especially I think for our listeners who are, expert authority figures, consultants, and so forth, like you work with businesses or with people to help them out. Not everyone is ready to take that jump to working with you directly. Many folks fit that DIY personality. They want to learn how to do something and implement it themselves. You and I are both avid readers, right? We tear through business books and we consider ourselves, I think, lifelong learners, which is great. But if you don't actually like implement the stuff that you're reading, it doesn't move the needle or make a difference. So as a reader, I love tactical books, books that don't just get me all excited about a concept, but actually tell me what to go do and the actual steps that'll get me from A to B. So that was really important to me in putting the book together.
I mean, we are very similar in that sense as well. Like all my books are very actionable, small bites of things that you can do that will have a tremendous impact on your business, whether it was networking or whatever I was writing about. And I agree with you. Like it's not just about inspiring people, but it's about giving them the next step. And often when people DIY, they get decent results. They realize the process could work, but if they really, really, really wanted to make it happen, that's when they start realizing, like, what if I had a coach? What if I had a guide? What if I had a mentor? What if I had a community, whatever it might be? And suddenly, the author becomes the right person for that conversation. But if you don't give them that taste, they have no idea what's possible. So I think your book kind of answers that question.
Thank you. And that was really, really intentional. I've read many books, as have our listeners, that the author has taken this approach of withholding the knowledge and kind of hiding it away. And they are the guru on the mountaintop you've got to go to solve the problem. So they get you excited and motivated, but really it's just a glorified sales pipeline. And it's okay for your book to be part of that sales pipeline. But if you're not sharing the information and you're holding it back, that's going to alienate certain kinds of readers like myself. Whereas the other approach, flipping that on its head, is give them all the information, share with everyone how to do it. And at some point, just because you can go watch a YouTube video on how to hit a nail into a piece of wood, you may in fact want to have a carpenter do it, even though you can, and even though you are able to learn. Sometimes you do want someone to guide you through it or help you out. And so I really took that approach, provide the full playbook, give everyone the tools they need. And if they do want help creating a plan or implementing whatever it is, reach out. Like, let me see how I can serve or help you, but not because I withheld information, but because you know what it takes and maybe you want some help doing it still.
Well, and there's a difference between a series of great tactics and understanding the strategy of when to employ which one and what order and why not. And I think that's the guide piece. That's what you would offer. In my books, I've told people that I describe an apple, but I don't give it to you. Like I tell you, in my latest book about launching books, like I tell you what to, like, here are the things you would include in the invitation email and the welcome email. And I allude to the fact that there's a whole series of other emails you're going to need to send, but I'm not giving them all of that. But in the downloadable content, I do give them the invitation email and the welcome email. Mm-hmm. But they start to go, oh, there's like 9 other or 10 other versions of this email I have to create. And the people who work with me, I'm going to go deep and I'm going to really craft something personalized to them. And one of the reasons for that is I don't know them in that, like, it's a book relationship. It's not a one-on-one relationship. And your book was interesting to me because you had such a variety. I'm going to use the word tactics, and I don't mean that in a negative. I mean that as like, there's a smorgasbord of options here, and they're not all going to be right for every business. And it really ranged. Like, direct mail has its place, and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's not something I would ever do for my business because I'm a this kind of business. And then on another business, you're like, talking about clicks. and one person's like, yeah, I don't do clicks. So when you were writing this book, who were you writing it for? And like, how did you imagine, I'm sure there's even more that didn't go in, right? Like, how did you sort of design the book for a particular audience, knowing that lots of different kinds of businesses were going to probably interact with it?
So there was a wonderful formative book for me that came thankfully early on in my book writing journey, which, touching to a question you asked earlier, I had this very naive Silicon Valley view of my book going from letter 1 in a Google Doc to publish on Amazon in, my guess was, about 3 weeks, which one could have done that. However, I thankfully came across books and resources along that short journey that kept pushing that timeline out. One of those resources being your book. But the earlier book that came along my way was called Write Useful Books. And Rob Fitzpatrick talks about this whole idea of having this book and getting your early feedback and having it truly be a useful book that is valuable to your audience. But all that predicates you understanding who your ideal reader is, right? And so you got to go deep on figuring out, like, who is it that's going to read this book? And once you know who that is, that helps you to build that list of early readers. That helps you to build your author platform, meaning like your list. That helps you to write to the right audience and not to the wrong audience. And it just lines everything up. So figuring out that ideal reader early on was important, and that helped guide which strategies go into the book. And fundamentally, like at the end of the day, if you are an owner operator of a business, right, you're approaching or at that 7 to 8 figure mark, the strategies you use to get back to growth fall into one of 3 categories that go into the formula that I cover in the book, right? You can move your F, your A, or your Q. And how do you want to do that? Well, that's what I provide in the book, the actual tactics and strategies. Now,
Could you share
will
with everyone
everyone
what
work
the
for you?
share with everyone what the FAQ stand for?
Yeah, so in the FAQ formula, that comes down to your frequency, your amount, and your quantity. And most business books that are talking about how to grow your business are focused on the quantity. Let's get more leads into your business. That's all. Your sales, your marketing, it's getting more pipeline. But I posit, as a business owner, if you have lead flow, there's so much opportunity on the table that you can simply have existing customers transact with you more and at a higher level. And adjusting just those 2 levers in the business can make a huge difference without ever having to go find new customers, just working with the pipeline you've already got going on, right? And so the actual strategies, to your question on that, Robbie, I found it's the same playbook I go back to again and again, the same tactics I use, whether it's a software as a service business, a coach, a consultant, or a physical retail store, and e-commerce, like regardless of the model, most of the strategies apply. That being said, we talk about niches a lot, right? I have a series of indexes at the back based on business model. So you can go in and say, hey, look, I've got a B2B business. And I list with the reference, here are the strategies to go implement first, right? I have a SaaS business. I have a retail store. I have a whatever. And so that lets you figure out sort of where you are, because everyone has a snowflake unique business that's mostly the same under the hood, but it helps you find sort of what's the lowest hanging fruit that can get you the quickest return.
Okay, the index is brilliant. It turns the book into a choose your own adventure based on how you're identifying your business. I read it sort of from the front towards the back, right? Your book, your whole way of approaching this reminds me a lot of how Doria Clark writes her books. For her, it's more that she interviews 50 people on a topic and then distills that information into something that we can all be accessible. But I'm thinking about the book she wrote where she just had like a zillion models of like revenue models. She was the person who knew everything about how to run masterminds and someone who was making money through podcasting. And like, it was, and I remember the whole time you're like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. Oh, and you're like, calm down, like just pick a thing, try one thing. And your book the whole way through, similarly, you're like, oh yeah, I for me, actually it was, oh, I just did that. Oh, I was thinking of doing that. Oh, I did that a year ago. It was sort of confirming and affirming that I was on the right path, but also giving me a little clue as to some other things that maybe I'm not like always as tight. Like I have so some of the digital stuff I do, there's an upsell option because of the platform I use. Am I always as thoughtful about what things I'm connecting? Like I should probably go back and review that. So it can be very overwhelming to read a book with so many options. I'm curious about the feedback that you've gotten from your readers. Are they using this index? Are they finding the next steps, and then are they implementing it? Like, you're very action oriented in the way you're writing this, but has that translated to the readers actually doing it? Because like we're not in control of what they do, are we? So it's not always something we know will happen. But you're getting a lot of positive feedback. So what are people telling you?
Yeah, the experience that you had, I think, is common, and if you can tell from the writing, I stress action implementation so much throughout. In fact, like in the introduction, I introduced a story about, Hercules and the Wagoner and this whole idea of like, you got to go do something, right? Like take action. And at the end of every single one of my tactics or strategies or chapters, I have a like take action box of like a few questions to ask or things to go do. And later in the book, we build your personalized action plan and sum it up to like the short-term things you're going to do. So like action is so important. And I can lead the horse to water and encourage action implementation, but without it, you just don't get a result. So the feedback I hear from folks is that they are following along and they do enjoy that because it has the thought-provoking questions and they're able to implement one thing. And that's what I encourage is like, go implement one of these strategies and you can still implement it again. Like some of these are iterative. You do it again later on, right? Like you mentioned some of them you looked at and you said, oh yeah, I did that a year ago. I bet you could do that same thing again, right? Like, there's a business we're working with that put an upsell in place. And that upsell did well. So we added a second upsell and a third. And next thing you knew, we had on average, every order would have on average at least one additional upsell. Some took all three, right? But on average, we're getting at least one incremental sell because it wasn't just a do you want this additional thing versus not, right? So like that's just an example of how you can iteratively apply something. A price increase. It's not something you just do once. You should be doing and reviewing that often where that makes sense. So the feedback I get is positive in terms of breaking it down to one thing I can go do right now, right? Get a fast result. That's always great for stickiness for continuity programs. If you can help your new customer, your new member, your new subscriber get some kind of result, right? That builds that confidence. It starts getting the reps in and gets them coming back to do it again and again and again. And that goes back to earlier, we're talking about writing useful books. One of the important things that is discussed in there is like, not only does the book need to be readable, right? Because you don't want to just sell the book. Someone has to actually read it. Then they've got to actually implement it and get a result and then go tell everyone like, hey, this is a great book. You would find value in this too. So if it's not highly recommendable, you don't get that snowball effect that can come from book sales.
Yeah, I feel like so much of this is the upfront time figuring out that ideal reader, as you mentioned. And before I move on, I wanted to mention the Dory Clark book I was referring to is called Entrepreneurial You. All of her books have that same idea of like the interviewing 50 people on a topic, and then that she wanted to learn about as a one way she's grown in her knowledge. But you're reading through it and you're like, oh, this is so good. And I'll put the link in the show notes. But I wanted to ask you about getting that clarity about who you're writing for, because I feel like you probably could have written 3 other types of books. Like this is a choice for you. You made a decision to write this book and to write it in this way. And this is your first book. Am I right?
Yeah, this is my first major.
This is your first book. Okay.
Major book. Yeah.
Yeah, like solo book and all that. So how did you decide that, like, this was the way you're moving forward? Because of all the things around growth strategy that you've tried, you've touched and worked with so many different types of businesses. You could have done something that was like much more niche in an area. You kind of went a little broader. What was your strategy behind writing this book?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about niching, right, you can go super, super, super narrow and there's value there. You can go really wide and there's arguably some value there. And there's a sweet sort of Goldilocks middle spot. So I really view this as book 2 out of a 4-book series, right? So book 1 someday will be for that earlier stage founder, right? Someone who wants to start a business, launch it, validate the idea, get it off the ground and go from like, that 0 to high 6, low 7 figures. That's a very different audience. That is someone who wants to know, how do I start a business and validate an idea, right? This book is for that established business owner. They're at that 7 to 8 figure mark and the revenue is plateaued and they're looking to scale the revenue back up again, right? Book 3, that'll be yet a different audience. This is now your 8 to 9 figure operator, where now we're talking all the operationalizing, right? Now we're talking leadership and all these other skills that don't make sense for a 6-figure business that start to become really vital going from 8 to 9. And book 4 will be yet a different audience, all on the same journey, by the way, right? But this is the person who now is saying, now I want to sell my business. Now I want to exit. And now what do I do post sale? So this is arguably the same person on a continuity, on a journey, right? A customer journey. I'm taking one slice of that, which is where most of my deep experience has been for myself and my businesses and my clients for 30 years, are these established business owners who got stuck in their growth. Can I help other people? Yes, but that's not who I'm writing for in this case. So down the road, may this book get niched within different verticals and industries? Absolutely. You will very likely see your business growth playbook for insert industry or, profession here.
Right. I mean, if you think of it that way, it reminds me of Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, where, he self-publishes a book. It's incredibly useful, applicable, builds a community around it. And then, he starts partnering with people and they start doing Miracle Morning and then like insert identity, job title, etc. And that's just like brings like the content sort of stays as far as the steps, but then the audience, the stories, who it's for, how it might apply in their life changes. It's a really unique. I mean, I think not unique, but like not a lot of people go into book one with something really mapped out like that. But I also imagine that there are certain people you're trying to call to yourself because you do have this tied back to your business.
Mhm.
So though you said this is book 2 out of 4, but this is the like group of people that if you could get more people to sort of knock on your door and say hello, this is the group of people you most are interested in working with right now, not so much the like early stage person, for instance. This is why you wrote this book first.
Exactly. I look at who I, get the most enjoyment working with, and where I get to see the quickest and best results. And that is very much this reader archetype.
So why write books 1 and 3 then?
Those aren't guaranteed to be done, but it does fit a continuum. I found when I was working with business owners who were at that level, I would occasionally get leads who came in that wanted to work with me that were just earlier stage, right? But to put someone just starting out or thinking about starting a business in the same room as someone established and scaling, right? One group were able to share the tactics and things they're working on and doing. The other group is asking like, how do I questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much not the same audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up creating a founders group just for those earlier stage folks. Even though that wasn't my initial target audience, they were folks coming my way that I was able to provide some value to. And so sometimes when we look at like who are we attracting and working with and what can I do to provide value, there's opportunity there, right? It's sort of an underserved market. And so books 1 and 3 aren't a top priority right now, but it does catch folks at that earlier stage to the ideal stage to the later stage, all audiences that I can serve.
I think the other way I think you and I are a little in common is that we have a bit of a contrarian point of view. Mine is around the whole bestseller push, the vanity metrics versus the hard won reviews campaign, and the waking up, engaging your network, and all the lead generation from that effort. And for you, it's that if a business owner is feeling like their sales are kind of flat, they go looking for ways to get more people to show interest. I tend to not use the term funnel. We could talk about why, but like the pipeline, like how do you get people to even show, to get into the beginning of whatever that looks like, and growth. Like we want to get more people. We're gonna get quantity. And like you're like, there are other levers you can pull, and it's like a different perspective. It's not so far afield. It's not like what. It's more like, oh yeah. So, do you feel like there's a subset of people having a similar conversation as you? Like how far off from the sort of ongoing general discourse of assumed this is what you must do? Like there's a lot of like everyone does this, and so people keep repeating the same mistakes. Do you feel like you're part of a burgeoning group of people that are having sort of a parallel conversation, trying to educate business owners about other ways to grow their business?
When I look at, speakers at conferences that are talking about business growth, or when I look at the strategies that business owners are trying when they find me, it so often comes down to spend more, advertise more, get more leads, right? And you get this point of diminishing returns. You're doing the same thing that you've done to get to where you are now that stopped working, right? Like I saw this firsthand. I share the story in the book for a business number of years ago. We were running Google AdWords, right? And we'd spent it was like 10 grand a month. And for every dollar we spent, we get $4 back right away from new customers. So it was a really good ROI. So we scaled that up and we got to like $20,000 in ad spend a month. And we were seeing like $3 for each dollar we spent. So we went to 30,000. We got like $2 for each dollar we spent. When we got to about 40K a month in ad spend, we were seeing about $1 return for each dollar we spent, right? So it's still good because that was still a lot of growth. And the customer lifetime value thankfully was there, right? But the ROI started to diminish the more we spent and the more we sort of tapped into a certain marketplace. And this happens in any lead gen strategy we have, that at some point a channel stops producing the same way. So to answer your question sort of around this, like the conversations that folks are having, it often comes down to like, hey, I did this thing to get my business here, but it's not working anymore and I don't know how to grow. And I keep trying new ways to get more customers when there's actually so much opportunity already within the business and the existing lead flow they have that they don't need to continue spending and finding and developing new channels. You can, and that is a growth strategy.
Right.
I just posit there's a lot of value already in the business.
Well, two things that come to mind. One is you're tracking and analyzing what you're testing. Like You didn't just set it
Huge.
and forget it. You didn't say, well, clearly the 10,000 a month is 4x, so we're going to just keep going. Like you kept an eye on those numbers, and you then changed course when it wasn't working as well as you had hoped, and you came up with different options. I think a lot of times we're just so all over the place in our businesses, like no one is tightly following that. But
Well,
also this idea of what else can I sell? Like to me, I feel like as much as I'm doing, there's so much untapped potential. I know that my best prospects are people who have worked with me in the past, and my best referral partners are people who've worked with me in the past. And I'm not. I'm always like there's already a universe of people who have benefited from either me or my books. I'll even extend that to like my readers, right? The people who've taken action. That universe is already primed to be in my world in some way. But if I'm always hunting for new people, I'm not going to probably be spending the right kind of time investigating what more I could do to serve the people who are already in front of me. And the worst case scenario is that they then come and talk to you about this great coach they just hired. And you're like, I do that work, like in your head, you're like, why did they come to me? And you're like, oh, I never like followed up with that. I never made that clear. Like, why don't we talk about what it like look like to work together? Like, I just gave some free advice and then I let them head off and then they went away and then they come back and they hired somebody else. I feel like you're trying to, I don't know, it's hard because in the moment we're just desperate business owners looking for the right levers to pull, and like the loudest one out there is to get quantity. And I got lots of leads. That's not my issue anymore. It's so interesting. Bottlenecks, like Jason Van Orden, I attended a session of his talking about bottlenecks, and I celebrated the fact that I'm now at a different bottleneck than I used to be. Like it used to be like, well, what
nice.
what is the thing people even pay for? You know what I mean? Like, how do I find those people? Like, how do I find more of those people? Like there's a lot of those conversations. And now I'm finally at the like implementation
Yeah.
is a lot of time and effort. Like, holy cow, this isn't just a pricing issue because I could price up, but then I don't want to only work with 3 people in a year. You know what I mean? Like, how do I build up the operation? So that's kind of where my brain is going. If I had more people, I've had 150 strategy calls in the last year. That's not the problem, right?
Were they
It's
the right strategy calls?
it's a mix. Part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason I built the new offer, the Author ROI Lab, is because I'm willing to talk to people wherever they are in their journey, including if they haven't started yet. Because I was realizing that if you already have a book that's almost ready to be published or has been published, but you cannot in 12 minutes tell me who it's for in a way that helps me come up with a marketing plan and a launch plan, then that's just kind of like I don't want to work with that person.
Mm.
But if I could have caught that person in the very beginning stages and help them to like identify the ROI for that book and then send them to the right kinds of publishers or assisted self-publishers or whoever is going to guide them forward. By the time they come back to me, it's just like the launch just does itself, right? Like all of that has already been in place and they get so much better results when that has taken shape. So, but that's where I'm like, and some people need help after the fact because the coaching stuff, like now that
Mm-hmm.
they've done this, how do they implement and keep going? So I've met people across the range and I've got much better leads lately. Like in the past 6 months, the referrals to me have been top notch. Like referred to me, flipped through my book, listened to a podcast that I was on, got on the call, knew my prices already because it's on my website. And basically like 12 minutes in, we're talking about how to get started working together.
Amazing.
And I honestly really stepped on, I'll be honest about this. I've talked about it. Lois Kramer, who teaches speakers how to sell more of themselves. She said yes so quickly. This is before my book came out. And I was doing the whole, if you want to like take time to think about it. And she was like, no, I just told. So she has used me as an example of like what not to do. And it's a little shame. I'm like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. But I was so shocked. My product market fit started to dial in. And I had never had that experience. And now it's happened so many times. I kind of go into a call where I just know that's a good chance likelihood within a few minutes I'll know, are we moving in that direction? Like this is not a hard sell. This is someone who's already done the research. It's a fit question. And now they're like, okay, well, how do we actually do this? And instead of me being like, well, take some time, like do this, I'm like, great. All right. We start talking about the next steps and then the contract gets sent to them after. Um, that's a little bit of a shock after all the attempts I've made in the past to find that product market fit. But then you have a different bottleneck. So I
Well,
think what you're
that's
addressing is the bottlenecks keep changing.
yeah, and that is, to the point what we're discussing earlier. This idea of like when you're trying to validate the product idea, that is a very different business than one who has pipeline, and now we're starting to optimize and pull different levers. But you touched on something interesting that I cover in the book that we could totally nerd out about, right? And this is like looking at our funnel, pipeline, whatever you want to call it, numbers, right? And actually knowing what they are for our business. And there's, for our listeners who aren't familiar with the theory of constraints, or TOC, a great book on this is called The Goal. It's sort of like required reading for looking at your numbers in a business. But we look at like, where is the constraint in your funnel? And then what do we do to fix the worst part of that? And again, like many things, it's iterative. After we fix that, in your case, we're talking about the bottleneck. Once that's fixed, you now have a new bottleneck that pops up somewhere else in the funnel. And from a contrarian view standpoint, I actually argue that having a part of the funnel that actually converts too well may be indicative of other problems. So, for example, if you're closing every single sales presentation you have, that may be indicative of you charging too little, right? Or you overselling, or any number of different things that could mean. But that's a great time to experiment with increasing your pricing, right? Because if
Which
you're
I
closing
just
every
did.
deal,
Like, to your point, I was telling them the mental calculus, right? I had already increased my prices a bit from like 2 years ago. They'd gone up, they'd gone up. I mean, the process got standardized, the service got better. I mean, everything got better, right? So it really is worth more. But I had this idea that I was going to sort of step it up, like 500 now, and then like 6 months later, and 500 then. And I had a client who had hired me say, "Yeah, you need to increase your prices." And I was like, got off the call, went to the website, and added $1,000. And I was just
great.
like, okay, like, yeah. He was like, I've all the things I'm spending money on, because he had basically hired a marketing person, he hired a publisher, he hired me, and the publisher and the marketing person looked to me to be the like lead on the launch, which was lovely. Like, you have a lot of cooks. You never want your client to have multiple coaches, but often mine do. They were like, no, Robbie, like, tell us what you need for this portion. And he said, of all the people I paid, you were the one providing all this extra value. And it wasn't just the implementation, it's the project management, it's the strategy. And he's like, and I paid them. And he so told me what their prices were. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, I'm way under valuing what I do. And from his perspective, is like, it was all the reassurance I needed. But it's a mental block. I mean, my service is probably $10,000, and I hear I'm at $7,500. But I'm like, in the world of what people are buying out there, it's a little crap that people are paying $25,000 for marketing plans that don't get them results. And my whole thing is, regardless of what else you do, you're going to be talking to your ideal people. Like, that is my whole thing. Like, reviews are sort of a metric that the effort's working, and they're going to be important on their own right. But it's really about, are you going to get more revenue? Like, and I want my effort to be revenue neutral or even revenue positive. Like, like, you should make money. You should be building that pipeline from all these conversations. And if you're not, that has something more to do with the business you're running.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I don't control all the levers here for them. So I'm like, we could have that conversation as a coaching package. Like, how do you adjust things? It's sort of like what you said. If the wrong people, quote unquote, show up, but they keep showing up, you're like, do I want to serve them? Like, you have to wonder, like, you're attracting them. Is there something you can offer them at a lower price or something else? But yeah, I'm reading your book. I definitely was like, oh, okay. Like, there's another book I read recently called Scale Solo by Pia Silva, Piasilva, for those who are listening. And it was another one of those wake ups for me, because I often, I in the middle of an operations assessment for my business, and they were like having a conversation about like, where do I want to go? And I interviewed one other person for the role of doing the assessment. And that person, who I didn't hire, was all about getting me to be $1 million business. It was like their whole framework. They didn't ask me once whether I wanted to be $1 million business. I got off that call and I was like, all right, no, I don't want to work with that person. Like, that was like a cookie cutter this is like how they do things. The person I was talking to like actually asked all these questions, and it was more like, Annually, what are you looking to do? How does that break down? How many people? Like, what does that process look like? And I have met a lot of people who are happy at $350,000, $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Around $500,000, they're doing okay. They've got the right size team. Their time is well spent. And when they start to push, they get to $600,000, $700,000, 800. Now they have a ton of headaches. Their team's now built wrong. They have to build things out differently, and the take home that they get out of the experience is what they were making at $350,000.
Right?
And I'm like, I don't need that headache.
It's
I don't
backwards.
need to be the biggest, baddest, 17 people on a team full time. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
need that. So it is interesting because there's a contrarianness to that, like
Yeah.
where everyone else is talking about scale in a big size, and she's like, scale solo. Like, what is the annual revenue that you need to bring in, and then how much of that are you going to take home? And to me, that's, I don't know, it's just a trade off that I think some people get fed a lie about being the $1 million business owner. And I asked about you being me being on your show, and you were like, are you stuck at 7 or 8 figure? I'm like, dude, I'm at the 6 figure, like happily at 6. And it's such a, how do you think people approach this question of where growth should even grow to?
Yeah.
And like, how do they define that for themselves amidst all that noise that we're getting about like hit 7, hit 8? Like once you get to 7, it's like, well, now you got to hit 8. I'm like, that's 10x. Like
Yeah.
that's a big jump. And then the problems are totally different when you get to 8 and when you get to 9, as you said. Like there's a, anyway, how do you see people grappling with these questions around growth?
Well, there's how do I see them grappling with it and how should they are two different things, right?
Yes,
So
true.
um, I sometimes talk with prospective clients or existing clients who want to scale to the moon, right? They want to build the next $1 billion or a $10 billion company, and I sort of furl at my brow and ask like, well, like why? Like, what's that going to do for you, for the world? Like, is that the kind of business you want to run? All of my businesses, my entire career, have all been self-funded, right? We've never taken on outside investment, right? And almost all my clients' businesses are the same. So these are all bootstrap business owners who've started this thing and launched it, built it, and are looking at what $1 billion companies look like, and for some reason want that. And my argument is like, if we look at why you're building your business and what the purpose of your business is, we can start to peel back the onion and figure out how to create a business that supports the stuff you want to do in your life, right? Whatever that means in terms of the impact you want to make, the lifestyle you want to live, and so forth, right? Doesn't mean we're creating, a lifestyle business or whatever else. It certainly can be that, but there's different stages, right? So at a certain stage for your business, you can have it that, well, if you want to take the day off, you can, because you're just not going to work with clients that day. But sort of the next level up is the business still runs, but you've taken the day off or the weekend off or the evening off and so forth. But you have team that's running the business. And at a certain scale, you're able to step back and get out of town for a month or a quarter and not interact with your business at all, and not just have it run, but actually have it grow. So sort of one of the measures of success that I like to look at is how much time can you spend away from your business so that when you come back, not only is it still in business, but ideally it's even grown in your absence. That to me is when I feel like you've gotten to the point of having a true business. But that does rely on obviously proving your product market fit and all that, but having systems and having a team. Now, it doesn't mean you need to have, office buildings all around the world, right? You can have a few key players who run things for you while you're not there. And your role is like, you're the business owner. You own an income producing asset. That to me is entrepreneurial freedom. It means you can sell the income producing asset. It means you can own it. It means you can work in it. It means you can build it, but it's not dependent on you showing up and punching in every single day, all day, just to collect a paycheck.
This is really where I am right now. Like I've now created a really great process.
Mm-hmm.
I've identified the right market. I know that my prices can only go up because the kind of people who hire me are the kind of people that would have been hiring marketing, but I can make the argument, do this first, get the baseline support, wake up and engage your network, get the reviews, get the leads, get the immediate inquiries that just kind of fall in your lap. And then when you start doing that other marketing and PR, it's driving attention to a page that's ready to convert as opposed to, a brand new book that's just been published. So we're setting that other stage up for success a few months later. But I had 7 clients concurrent between January and May. It was 9 clients altogether that just happened to overlap in a certain way with people ending and starting and moving and ending and starting. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that like consistently. Because then other people are like, yeah, you should do like 4 clients a month. I'm like, I kind of just did that. And like, I don't, I mean, I can't do that. But now it's like, how do you identify the right people
Mhm.
and train them and all that, which is why I'm hiring Kara Barnes to do the review of my operations side of things. She runs a business called Backstage Ops because she works with speakers around the back end of their business. And I've gotten to know her, and I like really liked her and her team. So we'll see where this all goes. But I'm doing the measuring piece right now. I'm a lot of it's like I have a sense of which revenue stream is doing better, like now I have numbers. Um she was like, what, in the intake form, what's your mission, vision, and values for this business? And I was like, oh, God, this thing grew so fast. I didn't stop and do that. And then when I shared them what I came up with, she was like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, okay, phew, now I have those. But I tell you, sometimes we're so busy in the hustle culture
Mhm.
that we have to be almost paused to think about the business piece of it. And it's very exciting. It's very exciting. Reading your book gave me some other ideas about it. And one of the things that you made me think about was you were talking obviously the lifetime value of a customer, but then you were talking about churn. And
Mhm.
I just thought this was such an interesting question that you had been grappling with, and you came across the answer years later. This shows you that I really read the book. So, okay, I have 2 monthly programs where people pay me monthly to be part of something, and both could be better run and have more people coming in. And of course, that's the thing I always think about, right? It's how to get more people in these. And then you brought up this idea of churn, and I'm like, oh, that's a different number that I'm not been paying attention to. Could you speak about this? Because I feel like a lot of people are adding new people to their membership group or to their mastermind, to their courses, but churn measures something different than lifetime value. And you talked about why you don't always know if people are still with you. Like I have some people who've been with me since the very beginning of me having that program. So I don't know. I don't really know what the lifetime value is for that person. How did you come up with this question? Like, why was that an important question? And then what is the answer around how to measure people's involvement in your organization?
Yeah, so the origin of this goes back to I had a subscription based business, and we got new customers, customers canceled, and we looked at the number of customers we had, how many we got, how many we lost, what our net growth was, right? All these common numbers we look at. And as I was learning more about customer lifetime value, I had that question of how do I figure out what someone's worth if they're still early on in their life, right? This is like asking an insurance actuary, how long is someone going to live? Well, they don't have a crystal ball. All they can do is look at the data we have and do some predictions based on that. And, I sort of argued this idea of like, okay, we just did a big promotion, brought on a bunch of new customers. How am I now supposed to figure out how long they're going to last? And the number I didn't realize I was looking for was churn, right? And so churn is a number we can calculate. We simply look at in a given period of time, whether that's 1 month or 1 year. We look at 2 things. We don't care how many new customers we got. We just look at how many we started the month with or the year with, and then we look at how many we lost in that period of time. So let's say, easy numbers, you start your month with 100 customers and you lose 5. We don't care that you gained 20, you lost 5. Your monthly churn there is 5%, right? So we can then look at the inverse of that, so 1 divided by that, and we can then figure out, on average, how long someone will stay with us. 20 months. So we can look at this annually, monthly, whatever it is. That starts to let you then figure it out. So let's say you charge $100 a month. Someone's going to be with you on average 20 months. We now do 20 times the 100, and we can now say, the customer lifetime value of my member, my subscriber, is the $2,000. That lets us do a lot of really interesting things. When you know what someone's worth longer term to your business, that can inform how much you're willing to spend to acquire them. So we can look at your customer acquisition cost, or CAC or CAC, right? And you can compare your CAC to your customer lifetime value. That's a ratio that's used in the industry of comparing your ratio of CAC to CLV, right? So we can spend more if someone stays with us longer. We can outspend the competition who doesn't know these numbers. And there's just a lot that we can do to inform the finances and the numbers of our business. One of the best ones that I love is we can look at how do we reduce churn, right? There's only 4 categories of reasons that someone's going to leave your business as a subscriber, right? So if you can look at what those are and how to keep them with you longer, either proactively or reactively, simply adding on, for example, 2 more months to someone's membership, in the example we're using of $100 a month, you've now gone from a $2,000 customer lifetime value to a $2,200 customer lifetime value. That's a significant difference. That's a 10% bump in revenue, 10% bump in customer lifetime value, simply by tweaking a few things in your business that don't cost you more money, right? You're not chasing more customers. You're just doing more with what you have and keeping those customers with you longer.
My membership community started by accident. I decided Thursday, March 12th, 2020, to write an article, 9 Ways to Network in a Pandemic. Number 3 was to host a virtual happy hour, 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. I got to do more. Look at the list. I decide I'm going to host a virtual happy hour. And I'm thinking, well, when can I do this happy hour? Oh, tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Tomorrow being a Friday. I did no market research on the day of the week. I just last week had my very last Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern membership community meeting. We're moving it as of this week to 3:30. That is an example of what can I do to decrease churn, because in 2020, Friday at 5 was fine because none of us had a life. In 21, it was mostly fine. In 22, people started to call in from their car, call in from the airport, and like clearly there were people who wanted to continue to be part of it, and there were a lot of people who left. And this whole time I was like, oh, I don't know what other day I would do it. And then finally, I don't know how it just comes up, like, why don't we just move it earlier? So now I'm really excited. I'm working on a rebrand. It's now going to be called Your Biz Home Base, because we talked about what this experience has been like. It's not really a mastermind, it's a support group. Anyway, it's so cool to get people to now think like, how do I keep the people who have been coming excited? And this will also create new opportunities for people to come back. So I have, a lot of people who have come through in the last 6 years. And now I could go back and say, hey, we moved it to an earlier time. Do you want to come back in? And like, I think a lot of people are going to, not a lot, but like some of those people are easier yeses now that we've changed the time.
Yeah.
I just
The key
wasn't
thing you're
paying
doing there, I just
attention.
want to highlight,
Yeah.
is you are listening to your customers, right? And that is like such a valuable skill many business owners forget. If you don't track the reason for cancellation in your CRM, in a spreadsheet, in somewhere, right? Track your reasons for cancellation and actually look at that data, then how do you fix stuff, right? And so
Right.
you saw that people were calling in more remotely or not making the calls and so forth because they just were busy or weren't around, and you course corrected to fix your churn. And that's exactly what we all want to be doing, is having our ear to the ground, tracking the cancellation reasons, and then being reactive about that to solve the problem before folks are now canceling.
And if I had really been paying attention to this part of my business, I would have made all those decisions 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, it's sort of a, like, I don't remember the quote, but like, what you pay attention to and what you measure, right? Like that's where your energy is going to go. That's where you're going to get the best results. And I feel like I keep recommitting to the idea of this program, but then I'm like, okay, well then now we have to do it better. So I every year or two, I'm like, okay, we're keeping this. Well, what are we going to do differently? We've added a bunch of, we've added stuff, right? Because we started with more adding things as opposed to changing the time of this one meeting. But I think there's so many lessons to learn and reflection points. And I was laughing a little when you were talking about like CAC and lifetime value. And honestly, you're a wonderful wonk. I love you so much. But like most of us just do not geek out on that stuff. And it's even knowing vaguely that you should be paying attention or at least tracking, like you don't have to read the data, but like I didn't have for the longest time analytics turned on my website. I thought I did because I had them for other websites, and like, someone else set this up for me, and they just did not turn. How do I not have Google Analytics like for my main website? It's a total oversight. But I met someone who teaches people how to read their analytics. So now I'm really excited to have analytics because I know I can meet with her every 6 months and figure out what it all means. So I don't need to be the best most experienced person when it comes to figuring out the numbers. I need to just have enough data for someone to sit down with me and tell me what it looks like. And that could be a business partner, it could be a mentor, it could be a coach, it could be someone you hire. But so many of us, like, we're not even collecting the data. Like, we're not tracking things. Like you said, if you don't know why people are leaving, you can't course correct for that. Your book is a wake up call. I'm going to be highly recommending it to so many people. It's very different than, I have a few books I recommend to people who are early stage, like you. I have a section of books that are like, for new entrepreneurs. I get on a call with them. I'm like, okay, these are 3 books you got to read, like Profit First. I have a bunch of books like that, right? Like, but your book, I think, is a different audience. And I know so many of those people that are in that, like, not, they're just more they could be doing. And a lot of it's like, we all want our time back. Like, we didn't leave our, like, 45-hour a week businesses to run 80-hour, or, jobs to do 80 hours a week as a business. Like, the freedom to work any 80 hours you want.
Right. For below minimum wage, but it's okay
Yeah.
because you own the company.
So as you're wrapping up here, how can people find you and follow your work? This has been a fantastic conversation, Jeremy.
Thanks, Robbie. So everything we're talking about, all this is at yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com. That's where you can find out about the book, me, the different ways I help business owners like you. The audiobook just came out, so you can get access to the audiobook. Articles and content and everything else that I write is all around this exact topic of how to get unstuck and get back to growth so you can truly have a real business.
Fantastic. We're going to put the link to your book, to your website, to your LinkedIn. All of that will be in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. We will find all the other show notes for all the archived episodes, exciting over 500 episodes you can dive into. You'll also discover a curated directory of experts who will support you wherever you are in your author journey at bizbookpubhub.com. Free virtual networking events, Kindle flash sales, new blog we just kicked off. So much good content. Check it all out and come back for the next episode. See you next time. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.